Okay. So anything that anyone wants to bring up, just what maybe people coming around from last week or any week. This is our last class, and it's been fun, and at least for me. And anything just circling around in your minds before we get going? No. Like I said, a couple people couldn't make it tonight. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Okay, so let's get centered here, get grounded, try and be here, not going into the future. The mind is always either thinking about the future. The future tends to make us either excited, sometimes fearful, anxious, but it's all just concept. This is where we were trying to get to, where we see things as they really are. Okay. And then the mind is also preoccupied with the past, having come here, maybe if something disturbing happened, maybe it could have been something fun, then the mind's preoccupied with that as well. So if you really just right now, what we'll do is we'll do the 10 breaths and then I'll chime back in a minute, okay? So remember that your inhalation counts as one, and the next inhalation is two, like that up to 10, and then reverse back. And the idea of counting is that it's a little easier to catch when your mind wanders. And we're not going to put the rule on now, but if you forgot what number you're on, you're supposed to start over. That's the punishment. But we'll just do our best this way. So I'll let you go. It's generally the sensation of the breath on the nostrils. You can focus on the abdomen as well. If your energy is really high and agitated or very speedy, then sometimes it does help to just focus on the abdomen, and you're not manipulating your breath at all. Whatever it is what it is. That's what you're counting. That's what you're watching. Um, and just make sure that your spine is straight, not rigid, but straight, with the crown of your head down to your tailbone, and then the rest is okay. Okay. Okay, I'd like you to just become familiar with whatever's arising in the mind right now. It can be a sound, it can be a sensation, it can be a thought, memory, or just a thought coming in. Everything is cognized. Everything that you're experiencing right now is experienced through your consciousness, through the mind. It may feel like it's out there, but you can't find where the out there is and where the in here is. It becomes very blurred. Most of it is in here. It's experience, okay? So pay attention to what the experience is that it's arising at this moment. Now pay attention to the experience you're having in this moment. It's a little different. I want you to pay attention to the moment just an instant ago. Now, an instant again ago. And see if you can see how that mental instant is the cause of your present experience. It's related, it's connected, it's dependent. This experience is dependent upon the previous mind's experience. So you can get a feel for that and just watch that arise. And now experience again. Can you can you trace, slow down, and just watch the arising of the previous moment giving rise to the present experience? And I want you to go back to when we were starting the class, 6 o'clock, or whatever time it was, 7 o'clock, or in Australia, whatever time. Can you now? I want you to trace backwards to that time and get familiar with that was a flow of mind, an arising and falling of cause and effect. The effect becomes the cause for the next instant of experience. We're only talking about 10 minutes of time. Just see if you get a feel. Main thing here is to have some feel or experience directly, not so intellectually. And if it's intellectual, that's okay too. So just spend a few minutes there. Now think about when I gave you that instruction, just maybe 30 seconds ago. See how the mind has continued to move to this present moment, interconnected. But we don't experience it as interconnected. We experience everything like a slideshow, still pictures. That's not reality. And now just think that this fluidity, this constancy, this impermanence of the mind is going to continue into the future as well. You see if you can find where it stops. I mean, just imagine. Can you imagine 5 years ago if someone told you that, the same thing? Would you imagine this moment? But your mind is the same mind of 5 years ago and 10 years ago and 20 years ago, even at birth. Same. It's not someone else's. Is it? Okay. Maybe we could do that for an hour and a half, probably. Maybe, maybe some people would fall asleep. But still the mind, you see the mind just moves. It's like if we were sitting here and you started, getting tired and falling, can you see it's a progression, isn't it? It's not that you just fall asleep instantly, right? It's the mind's moves, it's like awake, it's alert, and then one instant of mind is slightly, whatever the instant is of going to, getting tired, and then the next instant is building on that tiredness, on and on, you see? And then then it goes into that, and then you wake up too. It's the same fluidity of mind. It's amazing, actually, when we can begin to identify when you become, well, when we become good meditators, you can meditate on your sleep as well. That's quite advanced, but it's just another state of mind, right? So sleep is just another state of consciousness. This right now is a state of consciousness. Okay? This is a state of consciousness. Yeah, we're talking about a little bit about rebirth and a bunch of things tonight. And it's all just different states of consciousness. It's all you. Yeah. Okay. 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 See if this is the right one. Yay. Okay. So this is the sixth chapter of the book. I think anyway, it's the sixth myth anyway. And you know, each myth, as you remember, or you might not know, but each myth also has an accompanying chapter on practice, which is just a few pages long, and there's the meditations that are designed to sort of enhance the content of the book. And I hope they're helpful. I haven't really heard yet if people find them helpful or not. So this is the myth of only living once. YOLO, you only live once. And I'm having a little trouble with the screen here. Okay. Um, sorry. Okay. So, and also I don't mind having a conversation during this. This is a topic. Well, they're all topics that are very, um, sort of have big impact. And this really concerns rebirth. And I think I mentioned in other classes that for me personally, this was a personal mission of mine because the first book I wrote, The Misleading Mind, as I've mentioned many times, that I left out a few topics that are too thorny, I thought, particularly for a secular or modern audience, some not for a Buddhist audience perhaps, but the goal here is to really express to people and to share with people that these ideas, as you know, are universal principles. So if they're universal principles, they should be able to apply to anybody. It doesn't mean anybody can understand them, right, or resonate with them, but they shouldn't be wrapped in culture and language that make them foreign or unapproachable. So the goal is to really try and find their universality. So one of the hardest ones is this idea of rebirth or reincarnation, right? I mean, um, is it totally faith-based to understand it? Is it totally dependent on faith or not? And from the Buddhist point of view, no. It has to be logical based. I think as I've quoted His Holiness, is that Buddhism is founded on logic. And we've talked about in other classes, yeah, faith does come in. You need a little bit of faith if you don't understand something. And well, like it's a virtuous, it's a wholesome mind to have faith leaning towards belief. Okay. It's not a wholesome mind having faith leading toward, oh, well, it's really doubt leaning towards disbelief. I'm talking in terms of these topics and these ideas that you want to explore and explore, maybe learn about. Maybe they're true, maybe they're not true, but I think they could be true, kind of like that. So with rebirth, we do need quite a bit of leeway in terms of and flexibility. So many Buddhist writers today omit what is difficult or provocative in order to please their audience. I don't know if people are familiar with, come across different books and different Buddhist texts seem to leave or kind of not want to touch this thing about reincarnation. And I think science is not too far from being able to at least posit a theory of rebirth. You know, and it's not there yet. Buddhist science, of course, does. And then you talk about religions. Um, you know, you know, it's kind of interesting. Does Christianity believe in reincarnation? I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I just thought that's a good question. Okay. Does Christianity believe in reincarnation? Does Judaism believe in reincarnation? How many say yes? You're not raising your hands because no one says yes. Well, I can't see the people nor the cameras on. Uh, so that's no fair. So anyway, the people with their cameras on, no one said yes that Christianity believes in reincarnation. It does believe in reincarnation. Of course it does. Yeah. Somebody says, yeah, someone just, I couldn't read her name. Oh, it was Nim and I can't pronounce it.
So
Uh,
it's Ephesia. I was saying
Ephesia.
it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm
Ephesia.
sorry if I might have to ask again, but
That's
anyway,
fine.
Nim and Ephesia say yes, Christianity. Of course it does, but it's a little bit, mm, what's the word? Incomplete. So doesn't the fact that at the time of death you go to heaven or is it, I don't know Christianity, so someone can correct me. You go to heaven or purgatory? Isn't that the two choices? Is that right? Who's Christian here? Someone help me. Everyone's just not sure.
Karuna,
Well,
Yeah.
what is, go ahead, Jay.
for Catholicism, you may go directly to heaven, you may go directly to hell. Purgatory would be
Oh,
if
that's
you've
right. In
only done
between.
minor sins.
That's in
Uh,
between. What is that like? It's not as bad as hell. Where is that?
no, but it's tedious.
Where
Um,
is it?
in the middle, I suppose.
It's a place, it's a
And the sad
placeholder.
thing is, unbaptized babies go there. That
Oh,
always
no.
broke
Yeah,
my
that's right.
heart.
That's right.
That seems not fair.
No, not
So,
fair.
no.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay, good. Then,
you,
well, so isn't that belief in reincarnation?
it's a belief in there's a continuous you.
Yeah.
So logically, if
In a
you know,
different form, in a different incarnation.
but
Right.
incarnate means you're in a body,
Oh, yeah.
whereas this
Okay.
is very soul
So
oriented.
if you're, I see. So the soul is in heaven and the soul is in hell. Is that what they
Yes,
say?
sir.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
anyway, to me, it sounds like rebirth. Get reborn somewhere. Depending on incarnate, from Buddhist point of view, as you know, a mind or soul, I'm not going to use the word soul, but just, it's not that, we can use it for a moment. Mind or soul is dependent always on a body or a form. It might be a celestial body, it might be very ethereal, right? It might be like a spirit body that's very transparent, or I don't know, whatever they are, right? But it's a body, it's a form. The mind is always dependent on a form until we become very, very, well, even the enlightened beings have a form. It's a very subtle form. So I'm saying that Catholicism, Christianity, I don't know anything about Islam, but it sounds like they have a heaven. And these are rebirth. I did read a number of times that it was in the Third Council of the Catholic Council that they took the concept of rebirth as we know it out of the teachings, but they left heaven and hell. There was so if we are, I'm jumping ahead, okay? I hope that's okay. So this continuum of mind, to go to heaven or hell is a continuum of mind, right? So what it means is that there's some cause. Now, Jay was telling us, it's not being baptized, whatever. We don't argue that. But so there's a cause. A non-baptized mind is the cause of having the effect of being born into hell. That is rebirth. I don't know what else to say. However, it doesn't make sense because that mind is continuing there and it's still creating causes, isn't it? and it created causes before it went into that rebirth. So that's why, this idea of cause and effect that we talked about, was last week? The week before? Last, what was it last week? Last week, randomness?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have to become comfortable with the fact that if the mind is moving, it's moving from cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. And where does that stop? Okay. And we don't talk about enlightenment, just talk about regular beings. There's a constant, so from the point of view of the Buddhist cosmology and the Buddhist science, the mind when it passes dies, when the person dies, the mind leaves the body. The definition of death is a separation of one's consciousness from one's body. So when a moth or hits our car and it dies, its consciousness separates from its body, just like we do. Okay? Um, yeah, just like the cows being slaughtered and chickens and they're formed. So at that point, when that's the definition of death, is that consciousness leaves the body or the form. And now there are celestial realms also. These are not enlightened places. These are probably akin to heavens, like talk about in whatever, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, whatever. So for us, these celestial realms they are also impermanent, just like they're not eternal, is meaning. Because one gets born there with causes. Now when we're reborn anywhere, it's our consciousness that takes rebirth. And guess what we carry with us on our consciousness is countless causes and effects. Right now, you and I are sitting here, and guess what we're doing? We are creating imprints, which are causes. Okay. Those causes will ripen. It's one of the certain rules around imprints and karma. One of them is a karmic seed is never lost unless you purify it. And that because it's never lost, it will ripen someday. And it gets very fascinating when you think about, you know, I don't know why someone has, red hair, you know, not the form, not the why the red hair, not how. How is the genetics and those conditions stuff, but why you have red hair and your brother doesn't, right? That kind of thing. Why is, anyway. So those are all due to causes and conditions, aren't they? So we have causes and we have conditions. The conditions are the genetics, the DNA. The causes are something that the mind itself generates those effects, those causes, it creates causes and generates effects. And so when it's generating an effect of at the time of rebirth, and it enters a new body, sure, the DNA is there, but why that body? Why that DNA? That's due to its consciousness. That's due to the consciousness's imprints. Okay. This isn't at all. It doesn't fit any of my slides, by the way. I don't know. I just get all weird. Okay, let's look at what I had done. But anyway, this is all comes in. It's all germane to what we're talking about today. So. Uh, that's why I was mentioning we need to translate these into modern language. And when science, psychology, say, and neuroscience and other sciences become more familiar, and they're already researching this, um, you know, the whole part of this is the way that the faith um, turns into reasoning is we have to investigate this ourselves. So we need a formula on how to do it. We need to understand what is the mind. We need to understand that it's impermanent, meaning it changes moment to moment. Impermanence, the definition of impermanence is that which is produced. So if the mind is impermanent, it's being produced all the time. Okay, our body is impermanent. It too is always being produced. I know it's a weird way of using the word produced, but it is a product. Okay, if we just expand our thinking a little bit or our image of what it means to be a product. Okay, it's something produced is always a product. Okay. Now, what happened? A story about um, just as I was doing some work. Well, there's a some publication. There's a publication called the 16 Guidelines, the 16 Human Dharmas. Sometimes it's referred to. And I don't know why they did that. Cayton sort of. Anyway, what this was, the 16 guidelines, was before Tibet became Buddhist. The king of the time wanted to prepare the ground so that Buddhism could flourish there. I think it's Songtsen Gampo. And what he felt was that it would be important to introduce a set of ethics. Why? Well, because it would produce more lawfulness. It was also meant in order to help the people's minds transform, become more peaceful, and to become more open to Buddhist thought, Buddhist practice. So these 16 guidelines, so this king wrote, I think he was the one who wrote them, these guidelines for the people. They're like the Bill of Rights, so to speak. And so in these 16 guidelines, so this publication came out by one of our centers in the FPMT in the organization. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he wanted to know what they wrote, what the people had written. And the idea was to produce these 16 guidelines as a mechanism for people, Westerners. So it's kind of like Lama Zopa Rinpoche had the same similar motivation, maybe Songtsen Gampo, who did it for his people back, I don't know when it was. It was about 7th or 8th century. I don't know. I get these things mixed up, so don't hold me to it. So, so Lama Zopa thought, this is good. This seems like a relevant text to translate for non-Buddhist people, to kind of get an idea. And so, in order to affect their ethical behavior. So we went through for a number of, I don't know, it must have been a couple weeks every night. Myself, John Landau, who's one of our chief editors and authors in the FPMT, and a translator, Steve Carlier. And we sat with Rinpoche every night. We'd start about 9 or 10 at night, sometimes go till 3 in the morning. And he wanted to go through word by word what this person had written about the 16 guidelines. And the idea was that they would translate they would present the guidelines and then give sort of anecdotal stories around it, like with Martin Luther King and different historical figures about how to make these ethical guidelines come alive for people, be relevant for people. So one of the guidelines, I'm reading one of them to him. I think it was like the 14th one. I don't really remember. And it said that, so this guideline, it's not, the whole thing is not here. It says, yeah, she translated it as the modern version, know how to enjoy food and wealth without without falling to the two extremes of extravagance and deprivation. Okay, that's fine. That's a kind of a wholesome thing, but that was only part of it. What she left out is this on the right side, the other side. If you want to add to the happiness and well-being of this and future lives, use what prosperity you have towards offerings and aid. Very, very different meaning. She left that out because she felt that it was too provocative for a secular new kind of audience. And they're worried that, Westerners wouldn't agree with it or would reject it. So Lama Zopa just kept shaking his head. He just didn't understand why. And he said to me, or said to us, if you don't put it in there, you don't give them a chance, right? I mean, why hold back? Give people a chance. And if they can accept it, they can accept it. But many people might accept it already. So why are you not putting in there? He didn't want to prejudge who would accept reincarnation. He said every reader deserves the chance to investigate. Okay? So it is about investigation. And um, His Holiness, so these are things that His Holiness, what if what we're talking about isn't in the room? Meaning, what if it's not an object of our experience? Okay? And let me just go back. So, hang on. So, this is very materialistic. This is very, that it's only things that are tangible that exist, right? I mean, from a materialist point of view. And yet we say Jesus existed. No one alive today has any direct experience of Jesus. Why do we believe he existed then? No one has ever seen, I don't know, one of these galaxies way out there, but we say they exist through mathematics, right? And physics. No one can see gravity, right? You see the results of gravity, but isn't a baby being born or conception, we don't see that either, right? But we believe it. We know it exists. Now, instruments can see that happen now, but before couldn't see it. Many things that people couldn't see before that now science has revealed to us. So seeing doesn't mean seeing is not the criteria for something to exist. Logic and experience is what determines something existing or not. So what happens so Barbara, you had a question.
I don't mean to interrupt your train of thought now, but my question pertains to the mind. You are
Yeah?
talking about the mind, and the mind is produced.
Yeah.
Here's my understanding. The mind is produced. Anything that is produced has a cause.
Yes.
So where I get stuck is, where is that first cause of the mind that is now in the body, in this body? If there had to be a cause.
Yeah, the Big Bang.
Well,
No, I'm joking. I
I
never.
and I remember
Well,
His
that's what people think.
Holiness. Well, and I remember His Holiness saying, Big Bang, no problem, not just the first Big Bang. But again, if something is produced, which the mind is, and anything produced has a cause, I just get stuck with the mind is beginningless. I don't have so much difficulty with that it's endless, but I'm stuck on the beginning of it. Can you
Welcome to
help me
the
out?
Yeah, welcome to the crowd. So there are some questions that Buddha refused to answer, and one of them was that, I believe, 14 questions, but he didn't answer it. He did not answer it because there is, okay, let me just move that aside for a minute. The answers, there is no beginning to the mind. It's beginningless. So of course, in theological theory and philosophical theory, we're coming up with the primal cause, aren't we? The prime cause, whether it's a Big Bang or whether God, the creator, created it, right? That's what people do. That's what we all do. And it's totally logical we do that. It's totally illogical reasoning, though. The reasoning doesn't work because, so the different causes for the mind that come out, or the soul, mind, let's just use the word mind, are things like Big Bang. Let's just take that one for a second. So the Big Bang is for one thing with the Big Bang theory is that it is a physical event. It's an event of atoms and molecules and particles and all that kind of thing. I don't know enough about it. I just know a few things. That's one of them. The mind is consciousness. Okay. So we can't, so let me clarify. So one of the rules of cause and effect, karma, one of the rules of cause and effect is that the effect has to be in the same nature as the cause. Like they say, an acorn seed cannot produce a Tesla. Okay. A rice sprout cannot create an elephant. And interesting with that one is an elephant is a sentient being and a sprout is not. So that alone, they don't even have close to the same nature. So consciousness, for it being continually created or created one in a beginning, let's just say there is a beginning, has to arise from consciousness. It has to arise from a cause that's similar. These are the rules, and it becomes. I mean, I know I'm talking about this, and it's not fair for you to believe me. By the way, I don't. I'm perfectly fine with that. This is stuff we have to study. It's logic. We study it. We look at it. We debate it. It's not about just accepting it because I'm saying it. But I am speaking to you from what I study, and that's all I can do, right? But the logic is, but then if we study logic, then, or just look at it logically, then it doesn't make sense that my mind was formed from the Big Bang. I get that. I accept that my mind, which is consciousness and formless, cannot come from atomic, molecular, particle, form, base. Not, I get that. I accept that. And I think we should think about it, not just accept it, because I say it. Really think about, is that possible? Okay. So to take you down that road, because this is stuff that we have to all wrestle with for years and years and years. So I'm taking you through it in a matter of, minutes, right? So the now let's take so I don't accept the Big Bang one. I do accept Big Bang in terms of there is definitely, for me, it's not a stretch of logic to think that the Big Bang is the form, something with the universe. I believe that's what happens. But what produced the Big Bang was still causal. It didn't arise from voidness. It didn't arise from nothing. Impossible. And you can study this. There's some great books out on Buddhist, which is related to a lot of the Vedanta, the Hindu philosophy too, in terms of the formation of the worlds and the universes. And you can read all that stuff for you scientific types. And it's very detailed. So, but it doesn't come, what produced anyway, it doesn't matter, the Big Bang. So now we think, so my consciousness has to arise from a similar cause. Is God, that's where most of us reside, that God created man, woman, right? Which means the consciousness, I mean the mind, okay, the soul, the mind, whatever. But that doesn't make sense either. Because in that theory, God is pure. So my mind is not pure. Okay. It has purity in it. I mean, there is a purity quality. I'm not talking about it. But my afflictions, my anger and my desires and my greed, all those things, that's what the impure part is. How does a pure being produce that? The cause, the God, if I say he, sorry about that. So he's a pure being. That's the way we're taught. He's omniscient, he's pure, he's omnipotent also, all powerful. So there's no reason so he couldn't produce. Again, it's like I'm trying to think of something. It's like a flower. I don't know. You got to help me out here, but I'm trying to think of a pure thing. Like a flower doesn't produce a toxic result. Of course, less of toxicity arena, like a poisonous flower or something like that. It produces a result that's similar to its cause. And that, I'm talking on the physical plane, right? On the mental plane, if God is a being, then it means he's a mental being, and he's producing something that it's not of his character, not of his nature. Let's put it that way. So that doesn't work for me. And it's not just because I accept karma because I heard the teachings was it's about studying karma over and over and over again because I don't think one should just accept it. I don't. I think you have to get to it logically. It's like saying, yeah, it's like a lot of these things. I don't. I think us modern people just need to approach it very scientifically, very logically, and it takes time. So the God one doesn't work for me either because I wasn't produced in His image, was I? Were you? Yeah. So where was it produced? These people hate this, so we produced it ourselves. But it's not like a sin or anything. It just is the way the mind has been for beginningless time. The reason the beginningless time is the answer is because the a beginning time doesn't work. It's not like someone looked and saw the beginning. Buddha can't perceive beginningless time either. Because that implies a beginning. He can only perceive, that it's beginningless. He can only perceive the non-beginning. How about that? Have I lost anybody here? I think Barbara knows how to trick me because I get very interested in this. Is this helpful or not? I don't know. It is what we were going to cover tonight anyway. So I
It,
think we have,
it, it's helpful for me, Karuna, in that I've eliminated the two things that you've talked about, but it still leaves me with wanting to
Some
understand
beginning, some beginning.
some beginning of the
I think
mind.
I think it's not like I said, if we meditate and and meditate on the mind and become very good at it, we go back and back and back, you know? Seriously, I mean, as an experience, you will experience your previous life, some sort of imprints of it. You will, because it's in your consciousness. It was part of your experience, right? And you'll in life before that. And so the meditators that are teaching these ideas have never been able to find the first life. Now, the only one that really can go that far back, there was no beginning, is the Buddha. But as we attain higher and higher realizations, we can go further and remember more and more of our previous lives. Okay, I can't remember. There's numbers about which level bodhisattva can remember that many lifetimes, that sort of thing. But it's as we evolve, we can remember thousands of lifetimes, and we see them. So this is their experience, and then what they're trying to do is share their experience in a logical way, because it is logical too. Sorry, I can't find the beginning for you. I don't know what else to say other than it doesn't make sense that there's a beginning, actually. It seems like it doesn't make sense there's not a beginning. But every beginning that you would choose doesn't make sense. Okay? That's my answer.
Thank
But I,
you.
I think you should research it. That's just my ideas. I'm not saying I'm right, but that's how I've wrestled with it, right? I hope people are getting provoked. I hope they're getting almost confused. That's good. I mean, in the sense of, wow, new ideas. This is kind of bizarre kind of thing. Okay. So this is more of a personal thing that with therapy, it was kind of tricky for me. And I know the other Buddhist therapists that you have a client with you, you're working with somebody. It can be your family member, it can be a friend, doesn't matter. And things just don't change through therapy sometimes. Particularly when we start thinking about more intense mental disorders, you know, ones that really are insidious, been around a long time. I don't know about other Buddhist therapists, but for me, eventually I would sit and not really know what to say other than to listen with compassion. Because to me, what was happening, the reason these weren't being fixed is because the causes were so deep, so profound. It's a little different for me. I think sometimes we see causes created in this life or, disturbances and struggles, and you feel like you can have an effect because a lot of it's about this, about what's happened in this life, although there's always a connection to previous lives, but it may be not so heavy, right? So when someone is struggling in your office or your friend or your home, you know, it's like it, it's really hard. It's not meant to be, and my Buddhist friends do this bad thing. I don't want anyone to do it in this class, okay? The bad thing is someone's struggling, they just got, diagnosed with some illness, or, their husband left them, or, their child's failing at school, whatever. And you know what people say? What do they say? It's your karma. That, to me, I think is abusive. I mean, what good is that unless a person really wants to think about, it is good. I mean, it is their karma. And for a practitioner, it is useful to think that way because then you become a little more balanced in how you're going to approach the solution to that. Some karma is so heavy, it's not solvable in a natural sense. What I mean by that is I have to be careful because all karma is solvable. But without all the equipment, like Milarepa killed, I can't remember, 34 people or something. And he did that in that lifetime, and he attained enlightenment in that lifetime, which was proof. That's why he's an example in the Tibetan Buddhist culture of you can become enlightened in one life. You can purify any transgression you've created. If you've murdered someone, you know, if you've stolen, if you've, whatever, done the worst things, you can purify that karma so you don't experience the result in the future. That is possible. But when you have someone who's not a practitioner, and also sometimes even practitioners don't have sometimes it's possible. They can purify, but they may not have the what do I call it? Spiritual experience in their practice to be able to really purify if it's really heavy karma. Because some really heavy karma, mostly some really heavy karma, it does demand a certain understanding or ability to meditate on emptiness. And also when heavy karma is ripening, you think about it, like let's just say you develop back pain, right? And you can't get rid of this pain, it just keeps going on and on. It's very hard to meditate then, right? You can still practice and you can still get purify that karma. I'm just saying it's harder. If you have to look for food every day, it's harder to practice, to purify those imprints. If you have to go to work every day and work in a toxic environment, it's harder. Okay? Of course, the more one transforms your attitude, then all that becomes actually faster purification. You get over it quicker. But that's takes a lot of time to be able to have that mental fortitude. Okay? So what do you do, when you know? So I think it's very compassionate, actually. Very, very, very compassionate when you're with a friend or a family member or a client. And in your mind, there's karmic imprints. Let's say they're really struggling. And we see this all the time. We have someone had financial problems and employment problems. They keep having the same problems over, or their business keeps failing. They're doing all the right things. They got their MBA, they got a coach, a business coach. They're doing these things. They got an investment, they got a loan, and they still fail, right? That's because they don't have the imprints of success and they haven't purified the negative imprints of failure or sickness or harm or hurt or harm. And that, I think, having an appreciation of karma makes one much more compassionate because that sucks. You can't help them much. It's like people you give money to, and then, 6 months later, they come to you again. They lost it all at the racetrack, or they put an investment, right? These are just very, very common occurrences. So the compassion is that look how hard they're trying to solve their problem. But it seems there's some imprints that are so deep and strong, they just keep coming up. Sometimes it just happens once. Like, you know, I don't know, had to go bankrupt. But then they succeed after. That's because that bankruptcy was the ripening of I don't want to simplify it, but a body of imprints that they don't have anymore. Now, other people go bankrupt, get out of it, and go bankrupt again. And then they end up in jail. Things like that. It just gets worse and worse. That's due to the karmic imprints not having been purified just by having gone bankrupt once. They have more. So the compassionate person, this is really tough. Um, what therapy, and I shouldn't pick on therapy, but what we do with problems is we treat their effects. It's like basic medicine, right? We know that real medicine has to also be um, preventative, right? Yeah, and this is the same, basically a similar concept. So I would often, and I think my Buddhist friends will say this, you could be with your teacher if you have I'm talking about a very awakened teacher, and you go to them for your struggle, right? Whatever it is. And and sometimes you come out not feeling worse, but they didn't fix it. They didn't fix it. because they know that the fix has to come from you. And the fix is they know that karma either has to ripen and then it's fixed, or you have to purify it. There was tell you a story. Hang on a second. I don't know if this story will resonate for people or not. When I was living in Nepal, at Kopan Monastery, um, must have been, it's probably about 19, early 1980s. And in those days, we just had 85 monks, all young ones. I mean, the oldest might have been in the mid 20s. And one of the older monks was a phenomenal, very, very knowledgeable, very brilliant monk. He must have been about his mid 20s. And these monks, something happens to them sometimes in their studies as they get older, because formal debate, is taught and is practiced in the monastery as a means of sharpening the mind to such a level, and it becomes like a meditation. But their logic is unbelievable. They're just like drive you nuts because you'll say to them, "Hey, have you seen Lama Lindrup?" And they just came out of their philosophy class, and they say, "Which Lama Lindrup?" And, Lama Lindrup, the abbot. And they say, "Is Lama Lindrup, you mean the body or the mind?" It's like, come on, can we just tell me where Lama Lindrup is? It's like so annoying. So anyway, this one monk, he would sometimes, you could hear him in the debate courtyard. They'd get up at about, I don't know, 5 in the morning. He'd be up there debating with his other debate partners till like 1 in the morning. They just keep going. They just get so animated and so into it. And so then at a certain point, he started having some kind of psychotic experiences. And he, his sister was a nun, finally came to live with him up there to take care of him. And we would find him wandering out at night in the middle of the night. His robes would often be, stained with urine and feces and stuff. And he just couldn't take care of himself. He wouldn't eat unless you fed him, and just went downhill into this psychosis. It was really so sad. So I remember going to Lama Yeshe here in those days, Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche both living at Kopan, two highly realized beings, maybe Buddhas, I don't know, but highly realized. And we would go to them and say, kind of, I'm going to paraphrase, but like, can't you fix him? This is like this is the citadel of mental health. And, yeah, I mean, everything is here. If you can't fix him here, what's wrong? And I remember Lama Zopa saying, he's saying this karma, his name was Sultan Galtson, I think. Sultan Galtson. This karma that Sultan Galtson's experiencing is very deep and not created in this lifetime. And it's a very heavy karma. It's the karma of, and we think of this as some of the heaviest, of having broken his Vajrayana vows. So we have the Vajrayana, it was part of the Mahayana, but they're more, they're different than the monk's vows. You can take Vajrayana tantric vows as a layperson, of course, when you take initiations and things like that. And he said last life, I think he said last lifetime, that part I'm not sure about. Um, he broke these vows very heavily. So in this case, there's really nothing he can do because he didn't have the mental capacity to meditate, which would have been the ability to purify these. I mean, he couldn't prostrate or do any of the things that would purify these imprints. And then, yeah. So if you're a therapist and you have a good heart, and you can't figure out why I can't help this person, these people, then you become a little bit reflective. It's sadder actually, because I can't help this person due to these deep karmic imprints and my lack of full understanding and wisdom as to how to fix it. That a higher realized being has access to those methods, through clairvoyance and through wisdom and those kinds of things. So, a few years later, finally, his sister, he was from Solokhumbu up in the Himalayas, and his sister took him back home. And then we heard that he lived up near Lama Zopa's cave, and it's about, I think he lived about 12, 13,000 feet. And then we just got notice that he had wandered out in the night when she was sleeping and froze to death, you know. So, and she was always there to help him. Sometimes you can't do anything. Why is that? Right? Why is that? What was I going to talk on tonight anyway? I think I'm doing it sort of. So here's a few just thoughts to throw out. Why the mind must continue. The Buddhist argument is, we talked about all this just now, but let me just go through the bullet points. An effect must share the nature of its cause. So, uh, sorry, this is a bit trivial, but when you say someone, you really hurt my feelings, right? The effect is your feelings got hurt. Is the cause that other person, is that similar to the effect? Uh-uh. Because the person criticizes you, it's all through, it's all atoms and molecules, the sound waves and all that comes in your ear. The hurt is inside of you. So the cause is inside of you. The cause is mental because the effect is mental, right? Feeling hurt. Yeah, I'm talking, when you feel hurt, upset, that's a mental experience, right? So the cause is mental also. And this mental experience is formless. So those words are form, those waves. Formless causes produce formless effects. DNA is form, right? It's molecular, it's particle, it's atomic. So it can't be the source of mental experience. Condition, yes. Condition, yes. It's a condition, but it's not a cause. If it were a cause, then, well, if something physical were a cause, then everyone would experience that physical thing with the same result. Okay, so mind's cause must also be mental, which is a previous moment of consciousness. The previous moment of consciousness is is dependent on previous moment of consciousness, and the previous moment of consciousness is dependent upon all these are dependent on the karmic imprints, which are mental action, mental events. If the mind has a beginning, Barbara, then the first moment of consciousness would have no cause. And an uncaused moment cannot produce an effect, right? It's just basic. It would be static, permanent, unproduced. An unproduced entity cannot ever produce something else, an entity. So there is an unproduced entity. What is one of our unproduced entities? There's a few in the universe. Anybody know? I've said it before. I said it before. Can someone tell me one unproduced phenomena? That means something that exists. Is there something that exists that is not produced?
Space.
Yeah, who said that?
Jay.
Jay. That's no fair. You're in my other classes.
I take
Space
it
is...
back. I take it back.
So space is one of those things. It's unproduced. It does not have a cause. Wow. And we're not talking about outer space like that. We're talking about space, like the space between the atoms in particular, when you really break it down. The atoms could not move if there was no space, could they? That means we couldn't move. Like William, you couldn't sit forward in your chair if there was no space, right? We couldn't move our head if there was no space. That space is permanent. It's not changing. It's unchanging. It's unproduced. Someone's going to ask me this next question. I am just going to wait and see. No?
I'm going to ask.
Go
So,
ahead. I'm thinking it's going to be the question I was expecting.
well, I think then the mind is not produced.
Ah, is the mind space? Is the
No,
mind same as space? No.
no.
So why is it not produced? Let's let me
Well, because
let
if
me
it's
let me
produced, again, I keep going back to the fact that anything that's produced has a cause.
Yeah, let me rephrase it for you because it's produce is too big. Is the mind in a nature of production or not? Yeah. So it is produced. That's what it means when you say it's produced. Forget about the original cause. Okay? You're just going to have to live you're going to have to live with that one. You know, try and find it. You know, how it works. Don't give up. Really study how it could be logically how it could happen. But space is unproduced. It does not change moment to moment. It doesn't have a cause. Your next question is, what about the space in my cup? Right? Isn't that produced? No. The cup is produced. Okay? The cup is produced that contains the space, but the space itself is not changing moment to moment, so it's not being produced. Too much, too intellectual?
But Karuna,
Yeah,
when tea is put into your cup, the space moves.
that's right.
So it does change.
It is the tea fills the space doesn't move. The space, because one thing is projecting onto that space, we're projecting onto it, okay? So that what we're projecting onto projects looks like it moves, but actually, if in fact, if the space were moving, we probably couldn't put our tea in it, right? It has to be space. So, but this is not fair, okay? I'm going to preface this by saying it's not fair. Um, it's not fair. What I'm going to tell you is there are two kinds of spaces. Okay, there's this space of this cup is what's referred to. It's kind of a cop out, but it's called temporary space. Okay, because I break the cup, there's no space of the cup anymore, is there? We can't label space of the cup. And in fact, right now we're just labeling because of our perception space of the cup. A cup of the, yeah. Now about time, someone was asking about time. Is time permanent or impermanent?
It's impermanent because it's constantly
Impermanent.
changing.
Yeah. It's impermanent, and we have to remember to add one little thing. I won't go too much. I'm not going to go into this because it's, all these things are very deep and profound. But remember that time is a it's a conception, right? It's a label on two different events. Okay, just to keep it simple. That's what time is. So time actually is still a conceptual. It's a construct. It's a construct. Okay, it's not really. you know, yeah, just leave it there. Time is one of those that gets very complex, so I'm not going to go there, but I'll just tell you that much. And then you research it yourself and come back and let me know. Ask AI and then let me know. Oh, they won't have a class next week. Okay. So, but time, it is, we could say it's produced, but the main thing about time is it's so dependent upon a conceiver, someone labeling it time. They don't call it time, but we are seeing two events, and then we say, oh, that took a minute, or that took a second, or that took a year, or that took a lifetime, right? So the mind's conceiving these two events, and that's what we call time, I think. But I'm happy to be educated on that more. Okay. Um, See, when I always stress that in Buddhist thought, definitions are paramount. Everything is defined, and for the most part, you can go to talk to a Japanese Buddhist scholar, or a Vietnamese Buddhist scholar, or a Nepali Buddhist scholar, or Tibetan Buddhist scholar, and they're going to have the same definitions. That's so that they can talk about it and debate, right? And so, but there are the debates often are on about the definitions. No, it is, yes and no. It's like that, of course. Like reality. They define reality different, but they have a definition that they're talking about. And they'll say, my definition is this, your definition is this, and that's fine, because you can have a debate, but you have to know your terms, or you can't really have a generative discussion or debate about it. Then you won't learn. Okay? Okay. Let me go. Oops. Hang on. Okay. Consciousness has no end. Ignorance does. This is where it's helpful. The path, so this is really interesting. To practice this and to become enlightened, you don't lose your consciousness. You don't lose your mind. You don't lose you. I mean, that'd be kind of boring or scary. Who would want to do that, right? Oh, enlightenment means I disappear. This is a wrong conception. Enlightenment means ignorance disappears completely. So it doesn't extinguish you, it extinguishes what obscures your true nature. So our true nature is existent within us. And I don't it's a potential. It's not like a sitting little Buddha inside your heart or sitting little Christ inside your heart or a soul inside sitting. It's the potential. The mind itself is your enlightened mind. Your mind itself is your going to be your enlightened Buddha omniscient mind. Your mind, not mine, not Buddha's mind, not God's mind, your mind. Each one of us, we're sitting here. No one else's mind is going to become enlightened but yours. And when I say yours, yes, we have to understand what that means. What's the you? But the thing is, we're sitting here. It's very clear that I'm not you, you're not me, right? I mean, so we're all, and the ant is not you, you're not the ant. The mosquito's not you, you're not the mosquito. The halibut is not you, and you're not the halibut. These are all independent minds. All those minds, those are the minds that attain enlightenment. The halibut mind will attain enlightenment if it eventually. Okay? And so it doesn't become you. It doesn't become Buddha, like it morphs into Buddha. It transforms its own self, its own nature, its own qualities into enlightened being. Well, we already covered this. Um, a big bang of personal existence is rejected, a supreme creator being or first cause, original sin, divine punishment, or karma as fate. Most time people are uneducated when they talk about karma, they're talking about fate. That is not karma. And not now, but recent times we say the universe, which is just another euphemism for God, I guess. Or, I mean, in some of the Hindu traditions, I shouldn't say Hindu, it's the Vedanta, but in their traditions, they do have a primal substance called Prakriti. And that's kind of similar, I think, when we talk about the universe. The universe will bring it, or if, yeah, like that. I think it's a similar thing, but we won't go there now. Many books written about it. Go study them. It's fascinating. So consciousness, we, so if what I'm proposing is true, that the mind changes moment to moment, it's a series of cause and effect. What happens? What happens when we die? So, or maybe in another way, maybe easier way. What happens when we're born? So when there's conception, right? The very first instant of conception. Conception, the definition is similar to the definition of death. The definition of conception is when the consciousness enters the embryo or enters the fertilized egg and sperm. That's then a living being, a sentient being. Where is that being before that? And where did it come from? Did it just get formed right then by the parents? Because remember, we're not talking, yes, the egg and the sperm, the embryo was formed by the parents, by the union of the egg and sperm. But now let's think about, well, and just go along with me here that's the moment of conception is also the moment the consciousness enters that fertilized being. So if it enters the very first moment, I'm making this up, okay? It's not like this, okay? And it says, "Oh, I'm here," right? Oh, I took rebirth, something like that. Well, that's a thought, right? And believe me, it's not at that level, but we're to simplify things. It has experience. For it to have that, it must have had a cause because it's having an effect. Its first moment of consciousness in this life is an effect. You can't have an effect without a cause. Where did the cause come from? Well, it came from its mind, right? So what happens is in when we die, when any being dies, then so at the last moment before you leave your body, when I say you, I mean me too. You will have a thought. It's more subtle than that, but you'll have mental activity until you don't. In that, I mean, until your conscious leaves. The last moment before it leaves, it has that mental activity. Guess what that is? That's called a cause, right? We've already been studying that this hour and a half. So at the time of death, your mind is moving still. It doesn't stop. It's subtle, by the way. It's very, 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 very subtle, but still it's moving. Very subtle. So at the very last moment, it has make it gross again. It has a thought. I'm dying. Okay. It's not like that at that point, but we'll just do that for now. It's much more subtle. I'm dying. That's a cause, right? So it has to ripen. When the technology of the death process is that when we are dying, all of our functions, the word they talk about is absorbs. It's kind of like dissolving. So, and this you can study this. It's very fascinating. Or if you take the class, our class on death and dying, it'll go through all the stages. We have stages, and they're all outlined. I can't remember how many stages there are. But anyway, what happens is what's considered the gross mind, like what we are right now, begins to absorb, dissolve. And those mental activities and imprints begin to dissolve or absorb into the more subtle nature of the mind. And the more subtle nature of the mind absorbs into what's referred to as the very subtle nature of the mind. Okay. That very subtle nature of the mind is extremely it's not active like it's not active like this. All this stuff that we do all day long and sleep is well, it's most of sleep is gross minds. Those all absorb, they dissolve, they aren't functioning anymore while we're done. When we die, they absorb, they dissolve. There is one unique karmic imprint at the time of death. One's very last thought is the thought that propels you to your next rebirth. Okay, so that thought. That's why when we um, when we're in a sort of hospice treatment, Buddhist hospice treatment, or any treatment of people dying, it's very important to be very calm around the person, very peaceful, because the mind is so subtle, like when we're sleeping, that any disturbance can freak it out, and all of a sudden, you have a nightmare, right? Like when you're sleeping. You don't have, we don't have control over our mind much, so a nightmare can come automatically, or we can have a blissful dream. We don't have any control. So at the time of death, that last thought, we really want it to be a positive one, because that last has a very unique karma. It happens only at the time of death. That karmic imprint is the one that projects you to your next life. And if you look at my note down below, the bad news is, and the good news is, that their consciousness can abide in any one of six different realms of existence. Human realm is one of them. Okay. Animal realm, spirit realm. We have the hells. These things are not very perceptible to us. Animal realm is perceptible. Those are three lower, and then we have the human and two celestial realms that are where suffering is much more reduced. Reduced even from the human realm in many ways. And human realm is vast, right? Here we are relatively safe and not suffering, but in this human realm, we know people are living, starving in all over the country, all over the world. They're starving, they're at war, they're lost in poverty, right? It's just all in this one human realm on this planet. It's almost like there's multiple human realms. We're very lucky, fortunate. We created this. So that imprint we had at the time of death, we created that imprint that led to this life. It took threw us into our parents, into that embryo. Okay? So if you want to have it again, keep creating a peaceful, calm, generous, joyful, patient mind. Because at the time of death, it's not very controllable. It's a lot like when we go to sleep at night. You know, for most of us, we notice the quality of our day and our thinking kind of tends to influence our dreams, doesn't it? Not always, but it tends to be related. So, so it's the same thing at time of death, where the mind is much more subtle, by the way, and much more influence. So if we live, so the good chance of not having a strong negative thought or negative mindset thought really at the time of death is practicing well in this life. Because if you don't have the habit of having disturbing emotions, then they're not going to rise when you die, probably. Best chance of those of having a next a future rebirth that's positive is the state of mind when we die. And the best chance of having a good state of mind when we die is having a good state of mind when we live. That's why that's what spiritual practice is. Okay? That's what spiritual practice is. One main intent, not the other. Okay? Is to die. Okay, so the lowest motivation of practice in the tradition is to ensure a good future life. That's the lowest. Okay, so to ensure a good future life, what matters is creating a lot of positive energy so that your mind is very positive. Okay, positive karma, so to speak. So, are there any questions? I'm doing a lot of talking, I know that, and we don't have much time. Um, this practicing this, uh, it can take three. It took Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, three countless great eons, and which is billions and billions of years, or it could take 16 lifetimes, 7 lifetimes, 3 lifetimes, 1 lifetime. Milarepa was an example, 1 lifetime. That means he didn't practice in previous lives. There's a lot of debate about whether that's true or not. I mean, had to do something. But anyway, there are other great practitioners in the Buddhist tradition also attained enlightenment in 1 lifetime. So, but really it's about being on the path, and on the path, our progress goes from happiness to greater happiness. And at some point in your meditation, in your practice, you then cease to be an ordinary being, an ordinary being. You're still a being, but an ordinary being, which means an ordinary being is someone who doesn't have control over their rebirth. That's one way of looking at it. Okay? So the spiritual practitioner, the meditator, has control over his or her rebirth. That means when they're dying, this is very advanced, but this is what we hope. When they're dying, they're able to meditate on the death experience to where they get to the very subtle, clear light mind, and then they project their consciousness to a pure realm or to a rebirth that they want that will help them continue helping living beings. Sound too fantastic, maybe? Jay, I do see your question, and I'll get to it in a second. Um, so one thing I want to add here is the awakening mind. This is often referred to as the mind of bodhicitta. This is unique to the Mahayana tradition, of which this we're practitioners or trying to be practitioners of. In Buddhism, generally, we talk about two vehicles, which is Mahayana or great vehicle, and then the fundamental vehicle, the Hinayana. They don't call it the Hinayana. It's kind of derogatory to say Hinayana, which means narrow vehicle. It's really just referred to as sort of the fundamental vehicle, and or there's the other terms that can be used. Um, so why bodhicitta matters is that we can practice all of these things because we are wanting to be happy. From the Mahayana Buddhist point of view, that's still selfish. It's important to be happy, no problem there. But what's the why around it? What's the motivation? And so in the Mahayana tradition, to become liberated is the state of happiness. Complete, what am I going to say? Permanent, eternal happiness is liberation. So we can become liberated from all this ignorance and hatred and desire and all these things and attain nirvana. And in the fundamentalist school, that is their goal because they have such a strong perception of the nature of suffering that it's unbearable for them. This happens to everyone, but it's unbearable, and so they just get so motivated to get out of this situation. But in the process, it's they do have a lot of compassion for others, but they don't have what's called great compassion, which is the Mahayana approach is when we sit down to meditate, when we come here to teach, when we're going to go do purification practice, when we're going to study, we are doing, naturally, if you go read a Dharma book, a Buddhist book, because we're interested in it, we probably don't think about this is for all living beings. This is because I want to read this because I want to get out of confusion, but I don't want to leave everyone behind. So I'm going to get out of confusion, but I'm going to do it so that I can really help others get out of their confusion. Because without a level of wisdom, we really don't know how to help other people, really help. It's like the therapist in the office with the frustration, knowing it's karma and not knowing how to help the person. An awakened being will know something to do because it might be something that all they can do is affect that person's life in 5 lifetimes from now, because they can see that. That's the only thing. It's it's like how do you help a pig, right? Well, like Lama Zopa, huh, he's just phenomenal. So he wanted to put, I think, 100,000 stupas, reliquaries, in the ocean. And I went out on the ocean. Other people did too, a number of times on a boat, and he had made this board with these very powerful mantras on it. And he was going out in Santa Cruz Bay, Monterey Bay, and he would drag this board in the water. So the blessings of the mantra would have some effect on the fish. Otherwise, how do the fish ever make the imprint, right? A positive imprint to take rebirth as a person. That's how far. Now, because I'm kind of sometimes religious, I believe what he's doing will do that. But I can see that those fish might not attain a human rebirth for really thousands and tens of thousands of years. But now they have the imprint, so they have a chance. At some point, at some point, the imprints of that mantra and those prayers will affect. That's why, for example, with your animals, dogs, you take them around a stupa, say mantras in their ear. Those imprints will ripen, right? Because one of our rules of karma is that karmic seeds will eventually ripen. Okay. Oh, okay. I think I'll stop there. Talk to everybody. A lot of pretty heavy stuff, huh? Um, Jay, what was your question?
And I think this is for another series. What is the mind? You know, because I've spoken to other teachers,
Yeah.
and I have a real attachment to my personality. All right.
Uh-huh. So do I.
And the sad, what, to mine or to yours? Uh,
Both, maybe. Definitely to mine.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, they're telling me that your personality won't go on. So I'm not clear
That's true.
what
True.
does go on.
Yeah.
And like I said, I know that's a huge question. But
Well,
yeah, and I don't know. It's too bad I'm attached attached to anything. But
yeah.
yeah,
Well, okay. It's not that hard. If we keep it simple. Okay. So last lifetime, you were not Jay, were you?
I don't know. How do I know that? Because I don't have a memory.
Ooh,
Maybe I was very similar to who I am now.
similar. Yeah, you could be, probably were similar, but your personality. Okay, let me put it differently. I'll use a drastic example just to make my point. So let's say last time the person was a dog, right?
Hmm.
And now the person is, here somewhere, you know, whatever, a regular person named Curtis. Okay. Is Curtis and the dog the same personality? Okay, let me clarify. It is the same stream of consciousness,
Hmm.
but personality is different because the personality last life was the personality of a dog. It's not the same person.
Though,
Huh?
though dog lovers, and I
Yeah.
understand this, can see personalities in
It
their
has
animal
it has a
quite
personality.
clearly.
It has a personality, but this lifetime the personality is not a dog personality. If it were, it couldn't read, it couldn't write, it couldn't read because dogs can't. Okay, let me take a. You want me to go extreme? Okay, cockroach. Is that better? I, I got to convince you some way. So it's no different. So a cockroach has a personality. That dog has a personality. I'd rather stick with the dog because I want you to maybe not be, maybe see it as, yes, the dog has a personality, but it's not the personality of the person now. It is the same stream of consciousness. Yes. When we look at, okay, another example, sometimes we meet reincarnated llamas. I know many of them. If it's
Yeah,
accurate that that Zong Rinpoche was the Zong Rinpoche I knew last lifetime, their personalities are not the same,
yeah.
but the same person.
Can
But
you tell?
personalities change. Excuse me?
Can you tell? Do you see similarities?
Sometimes certain things, yeah, but it might be my
Yeah,
projection. But yeah,
yeah. Okay.
Lama Yeshe and Lama Oso, you know, very close with Lama Yeshe, and Lama Oso's completely different personality.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're the same. And yeah, so that's how my answer for you for that. I'm not sure it's satisfying, but personality. So, a lot of people would, for example, say, like with Lama Yeshe, they say, oh, Lama also should be running the FPMT because Lama Yeshe was the founder. And it's like,
Yeah,
no, Lama Yeshe is no longer exists. Lama Yeshe personality no longer exists.
yeah.
Napoleon Bonaparte's personality no longer exists. Okay? But
Okay.
Napoleon, whoever that guy manifested Napoleon Bonaparte, he continues to manifest. He's probably had what? How many personalities since then? Seven or eight? I don't know. I'm making that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's called the individual I. I as in HIJK. That's the individual I, and then there's a general I. The general I is what we're talking about, is that, went from a dog to Napoleon to an angel. That's the general I, because there is that person, that being who's transmigrating into all those different incarnations. Each incarnation is a personality, you could say. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's all we got. 1 minute over.
Barbara's got a question.
Okay, I
Can
see. I
I
do it quick.
ask a quick question,
Yeah.
Karuna?
That
Where
means I have
is,
that means I have to give a quick answer, which I'm not very good at.
okay, I think
Okay.
you'll get this one.
Okay.
Where is the current mind of Shakyamuni Buddha?
Oh, that's a good question. Uh, well, well, it's omniscient. So one way you could say it's kind of everywhere. But so in the case of Shakyamuni Buddha, okay, on the path, the Bodhisattva path to enlightenment, Bodhisattva eventually becoming Buddha, there are 10 levels. Okay. When you realize emptiness directly, without any conception, and you've generated bodhicitta, this awakening mind, you are then a bodhisattva of the first level. A first level bodhisattva can manifest in 100 different forms. You can go to 100 different pure realms to take teachings, or go to 100 all over different realms to help sentient beings. Then the second level bodhisattva, that multiplies, I think it's 1,000, and then it's 10,000, 100, it gets exponent. And they say that in the case of a Buddha, it's kind of countless. right? Millions in order to help sentient beings. So the Shakyamuni Buddha personality, I think I think that person doesn't exist anymore, but Buddha who was called Shakyamuni, he's still here, and he manifests for us like Shakyamuni because that's what we're told, Buddha looks like that, you know, but that's just he manifests that for our benefit. But it's countless. He manifests, and she, Tara, whatever, manifests in whatever way that they can help. But they might be right here in front of us in many. They say they're right here in front of us in many, 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 many different forms, but we can't perceive them. But we will, and they might manifest if we have the karma. Manifests in a way that blesses our mind. We have a good meditation, or avoid getting in an accident. If you have the karma, they help. They're right there. They're right there waiting to help. But we don't have they said they have a hook, but we don't have the ring. And the ring is due to our merit, creating positive karma through all these different practices, prayers, rituals, things like that. Okay. Okay. So thank
One,
you. Yeah.
I have one follow-up. So if Lama Zopa Rinpoche
Yeah.
is became a Buddha, which
Yeah.
we don't know,
Yeah.
why are they looking for his reincarnation as one single
He could have,
mind
because he could
and
have
body?
hundreds of, because he could or would or will have hundreds of incarnations, but there will be one that that we will label the incarnation of Lama Zopa. But there might be another one down the street that becomes, I don't know, becomes a cancer researcher, or that becomes a Catholic priest, that helps people like that, or
So
becomes,
currently there is no one being that is labeled the mind of Shakyamuni Buddha.
no.
Because my understanding is His Holiness,
Yeah.
if I'm correct,
Yeah.
is thought to be the reincarnation of Manjushri. Am I
Chenrezig.
Chenrezig?
Chenrezig.
That's
Yeah,
right.
but I don't,
Chenrezig,
we
right.
wouldn't say that did you say what did you say? Is the what? Incarnation of, or?
That he is the incarnation
Yeah.
of
We,
Chenrezig.
we would say is a manifestation of Chenrezig.
And
Chenrezig can manifest in
I get it. Okay.
just like, so he's one of the
Okay. Thank
far
you.
benefit. Okay. So just real quickly, so just it's important to think about. We spent a lot of time together. I did most of the talking. Sorry, but we created zillions and gazillions of imprints on our consciousness, and if we don't dedicate them, then they'll just ripen, mostly in good things. But if we think about it, those good things will ripen like an ice cream cone, and then it's gone. So just think deeply for a moment that all this time together. I want to imbue these karmic imprints, these merits, so that myself attain full, clear understanding of the nature of reality and the full, clear awakening of the awakening bodhicitta mind of compassion. Okay? Just think like that for a minute. Then they'll ripen as those things. Then you'll be in the pure realms and you'll think, how did I get here? This is how you got there. Okay? Think for a moment. Okay. Good night. See you next time.
Thank you so
Hoping
much.
soon.